All right, so this has actually been a requested video by a few people, and about a month ago or 2 months ago, Darth Brizzo reached out and talked about like maybe collabing on a video for what is a rookie card in non-sports, and should there actually be a rookie card or not. We both kind of have the same opinion based around the rookie card. We're not going to 100% share it right now because that's the point of this video. But the whole point of this is to kind of educate those who are brand new to non-sports and really to help those that are new to the space not fall for scams, because non-sports is kind of like the wild, wild west right now. There's not really a ton of documentation, and it's super easy to get taken advantage of, even if a seller technically has good intents.
Absolutely. And first off, thank you, Ryan, for letting me do this with you. You know that this has been a topic that of much interest to me for the last several years since I've been focusing more and more on non-sport. I'm not sure exactly why, but it is. And I've tried to do some writing about this, and we've talked about it a lot. I've talked about it with others, but I'm really glad to have a chance to try to capture our collective and respective thoughts about this in a format that hopefully creates something that's more or less evergreen for people to refer back to potentially in the future, especially as hopefully more and more people continue to migrate into the non-sport collecting space, whether that be, to collect only non-sport or to collect sport and non-sport alongside one another. So really glad to talk about this. The fundamental point here and what motivates us to do this, as Ryan was previewing, is that there are just some fundamental differences, very important differences between sports cards and non-sport cards that in the non-sport space create a lot more complexity and nuance and challenge, as the name of the presentation suggests. And if you're not aware of those and just jump headlong into non-sport collecting, uh, you can make some potentially costly mistakes. So that's where we're coming from here. Whether we like the rookie card concept applied to non-sport or not, and I'll just be transparent, I don't. It's going to happen, and so we want to try to arm people with as much information as possible as they embark on potentially that style of collecting. The only other thing I wanted to note up front is the whole concept of expertise in the non-sport area. It's non-sport collecting expertise is not like, vintage baseball card expertise or something like that. Like, it's the idea of a one-stop shopping kind of monolithic expert in all of non-sports cards. That's like an imaginary friend. It doesn't exist. You certainly have people with years and years of experience beyond me, beyond even Ryan, uh, who are certainly deep, deep experts in certain facets or certain silos of non-sport collecting. But when you're talking about non-sport card collecting, you're talking about literally everything that is not sports related, going back from all over the world, going back upwards of 150 years. You cannot have one person or even a small group of people or one repository of information that captures all of that. And so you've really got to kind of build on your own experience and do a lot of research and talk to other experienced collectors and dealers to amass your own knowledge and pool knowledge with others in this space. And even when you do that, you'll constantly be learning new stuff and finding out things you thought you knew are actually wrong. And so the one other thing I want to say before we dive in is we're coming to this passionate about it, having learned a heck of a lot about it in recent years. And we know others who we draw from who are even more experienced and knowledgeable than us. We're offering you what, at this point in time in early 2025, as we record this, we're offering you the benefit of the best knowledge that we have right now. Invariably, we will learn something a few months or a year down the road, maybe even sooner, that invalidates or calls into question something we say here. And so that's just going to happen, and just know that. And if you happen to know we're inadvertently wrong about something we say with respect to a given card or a given non-sport subject, please let us know. either in comments or reach out to us individually. We'll let you know how to do that by the end. And because we want to keep learning and we want to make sure that we're dispensing accurate information. So with that, I'll shut up at least for now and toss it back to you, Ryan.
I think that was a great intro. So let's jump into this first slide. So here's your Instagram, by the way, if you want to give him a follow. Mine is Breakout Cards or Breakout Sports on there. I don't even know, which is the sad part. But regardless, you can take a look at your top 100 that you're documenting. You also have, a second account now that you're sharing cards outside your top 100.
Yeah, I do. I just created that somewhat recently when I did decide to limit my Darth Brizzo account to just my top 100 cards at any given time. The secondary account is called, it's either Wide World of Nonsport or Wide World of Nonsports. I can't remember which. Each word is separated with an underscore. So that's where I plan over time to just showcase other non-sports cards from my collection from all over the world that don't make the top 100. So feel free to give that a look as well. And you can also email me if you have a question or want to talk about anything at darthbrizzo@gmail.com.
Okay, so let's talk about what's familiar with like the rookie card in the sports card profile. So mostly issued during the first year that subject has cards, which there's always an exception to that rule because of what people have kind of identified as rookie cards over the time, but we'll go through all these. Size, shape, composition of a traditional trading card, pack pulled, which by the way, I despise number 3, although a lot of rookie card purists will say it has to be pack pulled, completely despise it. And then issued in North America, mostly US, by a major card company. Again, another point that I completely despise and something that I find really interesting with non-sports. But this is kind of like the cut and clear definition that a lot of rookie card purists go with. Why I kind of hate 3 and 4 is it objectively says no scarce card could be a rookie card and we should ignore it. And I think from like the education perspective, at least in sports cards, we'll give you a good example. Yogi Berra has a card from 1947. I think it's called the Tip Top Red. And then he has his 1948 Bowman. Everyone that is decent with vintage cards could easily identify the 48 Bowman. And a lot of people say that's Yogi Berra's first card, but they don't know the 1947 card because it doesn't have the rookie card label. Another example would be Stan Musial. So again, a 48 Bowman for Stan Musial. But he has probably 5 or 6 different cards before the 1948 Bowman, but we're going to attribute the rookie card label to his 48 Bowman because it's easier for someone to source that card. Non-sports, there's tough cards out there. You're going to have to take years sometimes to find a card, which I find exhilarating. I don't know about you, but I don't like 3 and 4. 2 is somewhat debatable, but there's a lot of unique shapes also in non-sports, and I don't think you should really discriminate against those either.
Yeah, I agree. I actually don't even like this list for my own sports card collecting, as you were kind of suggesting with some of the examples you gave. I've always bristled at the tyranny of the pack pulled thing, especially in a day and age where, more and more there are alternative modes of creating and distributing cards. I think that will break down over time. But whether I like this list of common criteria in the sports realm, I hate it in the non-sports realm. It just doesn't work. And I will say that when I was brainstorming my part of putting this list together, I was drawing actually from something I've heard a relatively successful non-sport YouTuber say, even trying to apply these criteria pretty rigidly to the non-sport space and defining what a rookie card is. And, what I said to him, I'm not going to identify who that is. Some people who know me will know. And if you know, you know. But what I said in response was, well, if you rigidly apply those criteria to the non-sport space, like that may work if you're talking about modern, modern movie or TV releases or something from the last couple of decades. Maybe you can even shoehorn something like vintage Star Wars sets from Topps and O-Pee-Chee into that. But it doesn't work at all for more vintage non-sport, especially when you start getting into areas like film stars and TV stars and musicians and historical figures and events, historical events and monuments and things like that. So if you rigidly apply a list like this to non-sport, you're effectively eliminating from existence most potential cards that come from those subject matters, like actual primes of their careers, or when films came out, or when bands were active, or when somebody, in the past was president. You're just wiping those cards off the map if you rigidly apply this type of criteria. So that's why I personally don't like it. If you're going to do the rookie thing, which again I think is kind of awkward and leads to a lot of subjective, unstated misuse and abuse in the current hobby space, I still don't think this rigid of a criteria is useful, especially for vintage non-sport. Yeah, and this next slide, I think I kind of anticipated a little bit of this point just in what I said there at the tail end of the last slide, and that really is just that, you basically eliminate from existence most consequential cards for most vintage non-sport subjects if you rigidly apply that definition from the sports card realm.
So, overview of non-sports rookie card classification and collecting challenges. So, first, what is a card? Which that might actually be another video, because I recently thought about this, and there's probably over 20 different types that could be classified as a card. Next is the mode of distribution, the country of origin, subject matter or identity issues, set construction and numbering, card dating inconsistencies, which is honestly one of my favorite parts of non-sports, because people that get paid probably a decent amount of money do zero research. But anyways, pervasive misuse, abuse of rookie label, lack of comprehensive resources, and is it chartable? What is specifically out there?
Yeah, and this is just kind of a skeletal overview of some of the main topics we'll explore in the rest of the presentation, and sort of some of the categories of issues I would submit that you should be thinking about when you're thinking about buying something or figuring out something that is represented to you as a non-sport rookie. This is really kind of a shorthand list of at least some, probably not all, but at least some of the significant ways that there can be complexity and nuance in non-sport that doesn't necessarily exist, at least in, collecting baseball, football, and basketball cards.
So, what is specifically a card? Even if a piece of paper is rectangular or square, it could be sized anywhere from a postage stamp or less to a postcard or exhibit. So, what we have over here is essentially a postcard size card underneath the R2D2. We have R2D2. Then we have over here was the 1975 Panini, I believe. It's like a postcard size. And then we have this giant Statue of Liberty card, which would fit in the giant slabs that SGC has. I mean, this card is like this large, but people still technically count it as a non-sports card, where if you say that on the baseball side of things, you might have some questions.
Right. And that the R2D2 obviously is the control card here. That's from the 77 Star Wars set first series. That's a standard size trading card. And while the scale may not be exactly right on all the others, it's pretty representative. So like that bottom card there in black and white is one of the things I collect is Wizard of Oz. And I like to collect actor cards, people who were in Wizard of Oz and Star Wars as well, cards of them as themselves. That is a card of Roy Bolger, who played the Scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz. That's a card of Roy Bolger, obviously as himself, not his character. And that card is smaller than a postage stamp in real life. I've actually blown it up a little bit there. It's actually smaller in relationship to a normal size trading card than that graphic would represent. But yet, it is a card, and it's certainly not the only card I have in the vintage non-sport realm that is really, really tiny. But for some people, finding something like that may be like the only thing that you can find of them from like their lifetime or the height of their career.
Also, let's talk about some of the different shapes. So we have this ABBA over here, which is in a trapezoid. You have this George Washington, which is in a die cut. Led Zeppelin, take a look at that circle. And then what's kind of interesting in non-sports, and it occasionally happens in sports cards, is cards that are trifolds or multiple creases on them. We typically see this with Brazilian music cards out of the 80s. But this example over here is from the early 1900s. And take a look, you have 3 folds specifically on that card. Another thing that probably should have mentioned on here too, and I forgot to, is some cards also have staple holes. That's just how they were distributed, and the grading companies will grade those specifically a 1. That's a debate for another day if they really should or not, but you're not always going to see your typical rectangle card.
Yeah, absolutely. And the disc thing is an important thing, especially in music. I personally don't love circular discs as cards, but because of some pertinent, really important examples, Led Zeppelin being on that very short list, you almost can't discount them as cards. And certainly, there are a couple really early Led Zeppelin discs. I buy some of their later cards because I like them better and they're more rectangular like normal cards. Is that the first one, Ryan, or is that the second one? That disc that is pictured there, is that their very first one as far as what is known? Is that what the market treats as a rookie, or is it the other one?
Let me just double check really quick. I think this is the 72 or 73. Yeah, that this one is the 72 or 73. The other one has them against the wall.
So
Which I will say to this card, classic mistake by the grading companies. They will grade this as a 1970 when in reality it's a 72 or 73. The exact year is escaping me right now, but be careful.
but in any event, the first commonly known Led Zeppelin thing that is treated like a card and graded like a card is circular, whether it's this one or the other one, right? Like as far as is known, the one of those at least predates their Music Express and their Panini Kintanti card from 72, right?
Yep. They have a 70, 71, and 72, if I remember correctly, for the circular disc.
So
And then
that's one of those things you might be inclined to say, well, at the very least, can we define a non-sport rookie as something that's either like square or rectangular? Well, no, not really, because there are certain really important, groups or actors or whatever that have circular cards as their first card. In that, I believe what we've got pictured there is the first. It's either the first ABBA card or it's from the first year that they have cards. They may have some others from that same year, but it's a trapezoid, right? Like it's not a square, it's not a rectangle.
could you imagine if a baseball card or a football card was like that? The hobby would have debates for days.
Yeah, it would lose its mind.
Well, we'll talk about another Led Zeppelin card format in a second. I don't know if I put it in the slide or not. Oh, hold on a second. All right. So, what is a card? The importance of stickers. It's actually not the slide. It'll be probably a slide later. But non-sports collecting, as in sports like soccer, golf, tennis, boxing, many cards are actually some sort of sticker. And I know a lot of baseball collectors or purists will say stickers aren't card. Well, if that's the case in non-sports, many globally iconic actors, actresses, musicians, historical figures, fictional characters have no pieces that date to their respective heydays, right? Which is in baseball equivalent or sports equivalent, their playing days. All of these are stickers. What I also want to add in one specific wrinkle to it, and what other countries define as stickers is a card that can be pasted into an album. So it still could technically be a card, like a typical cardboard card that you would collect with sports, but since it can be pasted into an album, it's classified as a sticker. Baseball equivalent wise, you can think of like a Venezuela set, right? Tops issued albums with these Venezuela sets, and a lot of them are glued specifically into the albums, but we classify those as cards. Well, in the non-sports realm in other countries, they classify those as stickers because they can go into that album.
And one thing I want to say about the graphics there, I mean, number one, I'm a big Doors fan, and those are all pieces from my collection. So there was that bias in putting that together, but it was more purposeful than that. So the Doors, as far as I know, and anyone I know knows, have a very, very low number of pieces that actually date to their active period when Jim Morrison was still alive. He died on July 3rd, 1971. So all of those things right there, those are really like the four quote unquote cards that exist for them from his lifetime. And then, as Ryan well knows, there's something I don't have, which is another wrinkle in all of this. There is a series of pictorial gum wrappers from Germany called Hitchler. They have a set from, I believe, 1970, but or in that area, that features a bunch of bands, and the Doors are among those. So there are five total things that I'm aware of that date to Jim Morrison's lifetime. If those things don't count as cards or rookie cards or whatever, then they don't have a real card until 1991, I think, which would be 20 years after Morrison died and after the band effectively ended, at least their classic period, which to me would be a nonsensical result. But all of those things there are technically stickers because there are companion albums issued with all of those sets into which the pieces from those sets were supposed to be glued. The one on the far right is actually peelable. It has a self-adhesive back where you can stick it in an album like a more traditional sticker. The other three had to be manually glued into an album. But this just illustrates the point that a few of those, the first couple on the left, certainly if you hold those in your hand, they feel like cards. They feel like thin cards. They have printed backs. Maybe even the third one in that series is pretty card-like. It's been a while since I held it outside of a top loader, but you wouldn't necessarily know those are stickers handling them, but they technically are. So when we're thinking about how would we possibly employ some sort of standard definition of a rookie card that applied throughout all of non-sport, you have to account for things like this, that if these cannot be considered cards because they're stickers, then the Doors have no cards until 20 years after they were relevant, even though these older things exist from the 60s and early 70s.
So another good example of what is a card, right? But the line between trading card and sticker can sometimes be very blurry. And these are
Yeah,
just more examples.
yeah, this is a continuation of that basic point and an even starker one. All of these things are technically stickers because there are albums into which they were supposed to be stuck. But especially those two cards in the middle, where I show the front and the back, there are a couple of sets from Spain in 1978 and 1980. One is called Telestars, one is called Telepop. There's an example of a card from each of them. Uh, those are technically stickers, and honestly, it's very, very hard to find those in that condition because the vast majority of them were glued and pulled out of albums, and they have glue residue or paper loss on the back. But those are smaller than traditional North American trading cards, but if you held them in your hand, you would just think they're cards. They're very thick cardboard, and they have printed backs like a card, but they're still technically stickers.
And that Leonard Skinner, I should have brought the album because I have the full album of those. But they are also kind of smaller as well. The ones that I've seen graded don't have a back, so I don't know if they were actually issued with that or not, or the ones that got through grading, the back was peeled off and they somehow graded them.
I'm unsure too. I actually own that Leonard Skinner, that particular one that's shown there, and I've seen others from that set for sale from the source I got that from. None of them have backs. I didn't even know that those were gradable. Frankly, I'd love to grade that because, again, here's another example. To my knowledge, that's the only Leonard Skinner thing from the band's like original active period before the plane crash. That I believe that was issued in Portugal in 1976, which was a year before the plane crash.
You're correct. It's a Portuguese album. That's where I purchased the album from. And there's a lot of really good cards in that set. I believe there's also the Allman Brothers. And then they also have the Doobie Brothers in there. So a lot of bands that don't really have a lot of cards. I think the one after that is the 1991 set. which you alluded to with the doors that people throw around as the Leonard Skinner rookie because they just don't know this exists out of Portugal. Which again, we're not full experts on the side of things. There's probably cards out there that we have no idea that exist. They just haven't been posted
Right.
online.
Leonard Skinner is one of those bands I always try to be careful with, and like the Grateful Dead is another one. Some of those bands from the 70s that don't, the Jefferson Airplane is another one that they don't seem to have cards or stickers from the era you would expect. And I'm always cautious because of what I've learned already in the last few years of non-sport collecting. I'm cautious about saying or concluding that there isn't something else. I just haven't seen it yet, if there is.
The ones that have really puzzled me that they don't have a lot of stuff is Rush and Journey. Just for how popular they are. I know Journey has that 84 711 or 85 711. So does Rush, and Rush has some Panini cards later in the 80s. But I'm shocked they don't have anything that I'm personally aware of a little bit earlier. I know they have some single cards, like Alex Lifeson has a single card in a Brazilian album, but not like the full band with all three members. We'll be talking about that nuance in a little bit, man. There's
and that then as a little preview, that Leonard Skinner is
also in there.
Preview of that nuance because it doesn't show the whole band, but if it's the only thing that may exist, like what do you do with that?
Yeah, so let's jump into the next slide before we spill the secrets. But also, what is a card? So first up is gum wrappers. So up here is the Elvis Presley Hishler. This is a set that we talked about with both the Doors as well as Led Zeppelin. Issued anywhere from 1969 to 1970. Look, dating this type of stuff is really, really tough. I actually talked to a German collector who has the original advertisement for the Hishlers. So there's a little bit more dating on that side of things. But typically in our hobby, it's a 69 or a 70. They're actually gum wrappers, and a piece of gum was in there, and they folded them on both sides. Now, you might think this is quite bizarre that's how they issued a set. Well, there's also a 1958 set over here. Well, there's multiple sets. This is Men of Progress. This was issued over in the UK. So we have not only a German issue there, we have a UK issue with has a gum wrapper. And I wanted to show another example over here, Israel. So they had another set out of Israel, early 1960s. And you can see they had iconic people like JFK, Yuri Gagarin, and then also the first dog in space, which is actually a pretty cool card. I want to grab.
That's a great one.
I want to grab that and the JFK. I have the Yuri. I paid up for Yuri. I think I paid like $150 or $200 a few years ago when I saw it. But these are super, super tough to find. The add-on.
Can I say one thing? But well, I have one thing to add. One little historical thing to add, but I also just want to have a self-promotional plug here. Whether you see this like immediately after we do this or in the future, don't assume I've found it yet. But I really want that Doors Hitchler gum wrapper to complete what I think is the universe of stuff from Morrison's lifetime. So I will pay a ridiculously high price for a reasonably conditioned one of those if anyone out there ever finds it. The only other thing I want to note before you moved on from the gum wrappers to some of those other categories is I believe they also did a similar thing with vintage Star Wars, which I know is later than these examples you've shown. But for what it's worth, I'm pretty sure there's like a sugar-free gum or a bubble gum set that pertains to the original Star Wars from 1977.
And I will say too, I am looking for the Led Zeppelin Hishler. So if you have that, I'll take it. And a second Doors, because I'll let you get the Doors first. So
I wouldn't mind your second Led Zeppelin either, because I kind of collect them. So if you find a Zeppelin, go to him first and then me, and if you find a Doors, go to me first and then him.
And I'll throw as an honorable mention, I still want the Creedence Clearwater Revival stuff. That's
a cool one.
There's one or two in that set. So as an honorable mention, if you have that, I'll take that too. I saw Fogarty a few years ago. But our next side is silks. So silks come in various sizes as well. So the one over here to the bottom left of George Washington, that is a giant silk. And actually, you can get those graded by SGC. The one here on the right, that's kind of tiny, but it's the same size as like the baseball silks that you see out there. How about stereo views? Stereo view here to the top left. You also have things that are called CDVs. Again, there's just so many different types of things out there that could be classified as a card. And I mean, there could be at least 20 plus if I built out a full video on this. This isn't everything here, but that could be easily an hour video just talking about what is a card in non-sports.
Hey, one quick question. I don't know what a CDV is. Like,
So it's essentially like a photograph mounted that different photographers would have and sell. So there's a lot of different various designs based around CDVs, but this one over here is the only one that's currently being graded by grading companies, minus if you have like a rare baseball team or something like that. These are called prangs. I believe the photographer name was Prang, and he issued those out in the 1860s.
Were they like trade cards where you could like have your information printed on the back, or it was just the photo distributed by the photographer?
So there's both. So trade cards is a whole nother thing in itself, but typically on CDVs, sometimes on the back, you'll see the trademark of the specific photographer. Other times it's blank, but you'll have a photo on the front. And there's various different types of CDVs also, which make it really confusing. This CDV of the praying, they're honestly should be probably classified as not a CDV. It should be classified as a card, but just how we've dated the praying series, especially from Burdick, these are classified as CDVs.
I don't want to bog us down on this, but is what's considered like the first baseball card of the 1869 Cincinnati Redlegs or whatever, is that in that category of thing?
I believe that's a cabinet card, which is its own category.
See,
like when I was saying, there's like 20 plus categories that you could technically call a card. I wasn't lying. Like there's so much out there. It's an hour plus video if we talked about all these different card types and then the nuances behind what's specifically a CDV, what's a cabinet card, what's a stereo view. Like it's an hour plus video.
Right. And so you obviously are going to run into more of that in the way back with baseball and maybe some of the other earlier sports stuff before tobacco cards and things like that started to come along. But this issue is a norm throughout much of non-sport, right? Like you even have, some of these same types of less typical cards being issued at least up through the 90s, if not beyond, for certain non-sport subjects.
Yeah, where the CDV debate gets interesting is kind of like with Abraham Lincoln. Well, this is a praying that was issued in the 1860s. I'm sure he had other CDVs and cabinets and stuff like that, 70s, 80s. But then you jump into the mid 1880s when you start getting all the different tobacco brands, whether it's like a Duke and Sons or like an Allen Ginter that started producing presidential sets. And then some people will say, well, this is the rookie. Well, then other people that look at CDVs say, well, that CDV praying of Abraham Lincoln is the rookie. Then you have the debate of, well, grading companies don't grade any CDVs minus the prayings. There's probably CDVs that are earlier than the praying. Why aren't those considered? It just opens up a huge rabbit hole.
And right. And then you have my perspective, which is we're talking about Abraham freaking Lincoln. He doesn't have a rookie. He wasn't a ball player. So, there's always that lurking in the background, right? But your point is well taken that what the market's obsession with identifying like the it card for a specific subject is always going to do that, regardless of what I think about it. So if you're going to play that game and pay rookie premiums for something, you do need to be aware if, like Ryan was just previewing, if there might be a split of opinion in the market as to what truly is considered the first thing. That's an important bit of information to know before you start spending money.
Yep. So again, what is a card? I think you should take this slide.
Yeah, this is just really a piling on of information about the whole card versus sticker thing. These are just a couple pictures of an infinity of albums that were issued with various sets. Oftentimes, these albums serve as de facto checklists, especially for older sets. If you have the album, you can figure out what stickers should exist in it. And again, a lot of these originate from outside of North America, and it may have been intended that something that seems like a card have glue manually applied to the back of it and stuck in these albums. And honestly, like I think the norm has historically been in Europe, right? That people did dutifully do that. Like a lot of these stickers that are cards or whatever are very difficult to find in unglued states because so many people that got them in the European countries of origin back, decades ago did stick them in albums. And so that adds another layer of challenge to collecting in this space and can add a lot of money premium to certain cards if you can find them unstuck, unglued.
So now let's talk about mode of distribution. So some non-sports cards and stickers were distributed in sealed packs at retail, like most traditional sports cards. And here's an example over here of some of the different rock cards. Well, more than just rock, but you typically see that in some of these Brazil's packs that are issued over here.
Yeah, that was just a collage I put together of some open packs that dealers have provided to me over the years when I've bought various cards from them. Some of them will slip in like packs they've opened to show. So you just have the historical knowledge of what they looked like in an open form. And so certainly when you're talking about pack pulled versus not pack pulled, there were pack pulled cards and stickers in the vintage non-sport space. Now, if you hold those packs in hand, they really aren't like waxy paper. A lot of them
They're
are really,
super thin.
they're thin, cheap. And the one thing that you do have to be careful of, I've even bought some graded copies of those unopened, which is one thing. But if you're going to buy unopened packs, you need to be aware that a lot of those are so thin that people can see through to at least the top and or bottom card that are in or sticker that are in those packs. So be careful about that if you're paying up for sealed packs because some of them can be very easily cherry picked.
You know what I will also say is I don't think they do this right now, but it would be really cool if one day the grading companies would be able to grade open packs. So it's already been open. Don't assign like a numerical grade or something like that. Just say like authentic, because I would love to have some of these packs just slabbed up because I feel like a lot of these are going to be lost over time. And
Yeah,
there's great ticket stubs that have been used that have been ripped. And there's so much cool art, not only just in the non-sports, but even like with baseball and stuff like that. Like imagine getting slabbed like a 52 baseball pack. I mean, I think there's a market there. I don't know what the size would be, but that is one wish I would have for grading companies.
I
Which
think you'll see that over time, especially as more and more of the existing card supply gets graded. And certainly, if the hobby grows and there's just more of an insatiable demand, like what else can we grade and charge a fee for? I think you'll see more of that over time. I think if the non sport space keeps growing markedly in future years, there's always that possibility because they clearly do grade at least the major sealed packs. I mean, I have a 68 Panini Cantanti pack that's sealed that's graded by PSA.
yeah, and maybe I'll make a video in the future. 10 things I want to see from grading companies. If you guys want to see that, let me know because I think it would be kind of interesting. Again, more mode of distribution. So I'll let you take this off.
Yeah, so this is just another list, probably incomplete, but providing examples of other ways besides the pack pulled thing, how non-sport cards, especially vintage non-sport cards, could be distributed by means other than some sort of sealed pack. So you see this in the sports realm as well, and in some familiar non-sport sets, product premiums like pack-ins with bread, or pastries, chocolate. That happened a lot with a lot of vintage non-sport cards and stickers, especially in Europe. There were certain, and all of these things I've got pictured here are in one way, shape, or form distributed by a method other than sealed packs. There are game cards as well. Some stickers and cards, really more stickers, were issued as complete sets along with the album. So you could get like a sealed complete set with the album. That wasn't true of every sticker set, but it was true of some. And even some very famous non-sport sets like 1968 Panini Cantanti, which is the first Panini music set. Some of those were issued in packs Others were issued as complete sets with albums. I actually have one of the 3 existing PSA 10s of the Doors from that 68 set. In fact, it was pictured a few slides earlier. My understanding is that all 3 of the 10s that exist for the Doors from that set came from sealed complete sets that were issued with albums and were purchased in the last few years, broken and graded. Not aware of any 10s that have come from even still sealed packs. So there's interesting wrinkles like that. You could have mailaways, giveaways, promos. So just taking these quickly, these examples I've provided kind of clockwise, the black and white cards in the upper left are from a 1968 country music magazine set. And these were actually provided as a promotion through the magazine, unlike some music cards from Europe more recently, like Bravo magazine, Freedom magazine, and others. Those cards weren't actually issued as inserts in the magazine. You had to mail in if you got certain offer through the magazine, and then they would send you a number of uncut sheets that had like 8 cards to a sheet, and they would send you the complete set in the mail, and then you had to hand cut separate them. The Bobby Fischer card there in the upper middle is from the Victoria Vedette Parade set from is that Belgium? I always get that. That's Belgium, isn't it?
It's Belgium, yeah. That's the classic one where PSA
Yeah, we'll
labels the
talk about some
73
examples from that
We'll
stuff
talk about
later.
it.
But that one was issued with chocolates, and oftentimes there's paper damage on the back from where it was kind of affixed to the wrapper with glue. I've also seen and had examples where there are major chocolate stains on the back that even still smell like chocolate. So that was the mode of distribution of that. The Mickey and Minnie card in the upper right was distributed in the 30s with various types of bread. Below that, you have a 4-panel of Wizard of Oz cards. Those were all game cards from the UK from a company called Castle Brothers. So is the Mickey card there in the middle, also a Castle Brothers set. The other card is the famous Walt Disney with Mickey tobacco card from the UK. So certainly there were loads of tobacco cards, especially in England, issued over many, many years. And that's kind of its own subspecialty, which your friend Ian may be one of the true, master experts.
He's my go-to on everything with that.
Right. Although he himself would admit there are gaps in his knowledge, especially when you start getting into continental stuff as opposed to UK stuff. So it just goes to show even the person we would probably both say might be the most knowledgeable overall expert we know still doesn't know everything, and no one does. And then just to finish things off, there on the bottom left, those are all examples of, again, stickers that came with chocolate in Belgium that feature scenes from various classic Disney movies. And to my knowledge, those are the things that exist that are most close in time to the actual release of those films, like the Snow White one on top. I think those come from like 1939 or 40, just a couple of years after the movie actually came out. And that's generally true of all the different sets that were issued that way. But they all came with some sort of confectionery product like chocolate or pastries in Belgium.
So where non-sports cards were distributed. So typically you think of cards being just America or maybe Canada. Well, all these countries over here have produced cards, and there's probably quite a few countries that we did not include on here that have also had cards. Quite a few of these I've purchased cards specifically from those countries and have gotten mailed over to the US, which that can be a challenge in itself, but it's impossible to know everything about cards in each one of these countries. And I think that's what we keep trying to tell you guys is like, there's just so much out there, and a lot of it isn't online.
Right. And that's why you can never say with complete confidence that you know for certain that you know what somebody's first thing is, because you know, maybe there's something earlier from Israel or the island of Malta or something, or Uruguay, that nobody really in the market knows about, or hardly anyone does. And, if that's earlier, I get it that that may be harder to get. It may be virtually impossible to get. But if
Exactly.
it's the first thing, it's the first thing. I mean, that's just the reality.
And I had that happen with JP Morgan. So his first card that I was aware of was issued out of Germany in the 1920s. One of the sets that I collect a lot of is Kousis cards. And one of the sellers that I buy a lot of Kousis cards from sent me a picture, and he had a JP Morgan. Um, those Kousis cards were issued anywhere from like 1905 through 1910, which obviously is way earlier than the German card, which I thought was his first. So there's always going to be something out there. You'd be surprised when it hits market.
Right, and that's one of the main reasons why I personally think that being overly obsessed with the rookie concept in the non-sport realm is kind of a fool's errand. I mean, again, I know most people are going to do it because that's how we were all conditioned, since the early 80s in the sports card realm. And I understand that both collectors and especially a lot of more investors or speculators want it to be easy to identify, like, what's the card that's most likely to go up in value over time or be the most valuable. And we're all conditioned to think that's probably some sort of rookie card. So I get all that, but you just don't know, and you can't know. And again, that's one of the fundamental points of this whole discussion is, if you're going to do the non-sport rookie thing, at least be aware that nobody knows. The person selling to you doesn't know that that's really that person's first thing. You don't know, no matter how much, like Ryan just said, no matter how experienced you are as a non-sport collector, you don't know for sure what else might be out there that might be earlier. The market in general probably doesn't know if you don't, because there aren't that many people with that level of deep expertise in this space, which is one of the exciting things about it. People talk about things like price discovery and the like. Well, this is the fertile crescent of all that, when most of that ground has already been claimed in many realms of sports card collecting. But you just never know. And I will say, look, I buy cards of people and things I collect that are considered right now to be quote unquote rookie cards. And I sometimes pay the big premiums to get those cards if I like them, but I do so consciously and knowing that what we all think today could prove to be wrong in the future, and that non-sport rookie premium that I'm paying could completely evaporate tomorrow if something else comes to light that is earlier.
So I'll have you talk about this one, self versus character.
Yeah, so this is we're getting into some of the identity conundrums, as I've called them. Some of the wrinkles that exist in identifying rookies in the non-sport area that don't typically exist in the sports card realm. So one of them is, are we talking about rookies of an actor or an actress, or I provide Tarantino also as an example, or are we talking about character rookies, or are we talking about both? So that yellow bordered Princess Leia card there is from 1977. That's a Princess Leia card. Many people, well, we'll get into whether that even qualifies as a rookie for reasons I'll talk about in a few slides. But let's just say for present purposes, that's a Princess Leia rookie from 1977. Is that also Carrie Fisher's rookie? Or is the Carrie Fisher card there from 1978 with Carrie Fisher as herself? Is that her personal rookie? However you answer that question, then I would say, well, once an actor has a rookie of themselves as themselves, do we still have different rookies for every different character they play? Is there an Indiana Jones rookie in addition to a Harrison Ford rookie, in addition to a Han Solo rookie? Same sort of thing with Quentin Tarantino. I don't know if it's really his first, but one of his first cards as himself is that limited numbered Panini card from 2007, but he had cards from the Alias series where he played a character in the show from, I think those are like 2003. I don't have my glasses on right now. But so is the 2003 card a Quentin Tarantino rookie, even though it's of a character in a show? Or is the 2007 card of Tarantino as himself like the Tarantino, the director rookie? I mean, there are no settled answers to these things. I ask these questions, or we ask these questions, only to point out the things you should be thinking about, ideally, when you're deciding what you think someone's rookie is and how much you're willing to pay a premium for that.
And here's another kind of fun wrinkle. I probably should put this slide later. Actually, I'm going to switch this out for a second. I think this is a great point to put this example.
Okay.
Because we talk about Brian Johnson with over here. Let me just make sure this is still recording. All right, we're good. Let me just go here. 3, 2, 1. We go back. Another example, which I kind of find interesting, is pre-famous band. So you have Brian Johnson, and I'm sure he has a lot of other earlier cards in this 1991 over here, but I just wanted to point out that he was part of a band before he joined AC/DC. Was it 1980 or 1981? And he has this card from the mid 1970s. So if you're trying to go after a Brian Johnson card, do you go after his AC/DC, the first card that he has over there, or do you go when he was in a less famous band?
Yeah, and you'll find as we go through these things, there's a lot of these like identity type conundrum questions that pertain even more potently in the music space. I mean, some of them are more endemic to film or TV, like the example we saw on the first slide, but a lot of them are music related.
Well, we're going to change up the pace a little bit. And we actually both disagree with each other on this one, which is kind of fun. And we're not the only people to disagree on this. There's been articles 10 plus years ago that talk about what is the first Batman card. There's a group of people that identifies the first Batman card as this card that came from the Strange True Stories out of 1936. And then there's also a group of people that classify specifically the Topps version of this 1966 Batman, which I will say there's 5 different versions of this card out there, not just the Topps one, which goes back into a whole debate of country of origin, right? There's 5 different versions of this Batman card. Are all those classified as rookies if the 1966 Batman is the rookie? But I'll let you also add in the additional wrinkle because I'm not an expert on superheroes. Tell us a little bit about when the first Batman comics came out or TV show.
Yeah, and that would be my position on the 36 card or whatever, which I wasn't that familiar with at all until you pointed it out to me. I mean, I'm a pretty big Batman fan. I actually have one tattoo, and it's of the Joker. I've been a huge Batman fan since I was a kid, so this debate is kind of near and dear to my heart. Before I get to that issue, though, my issue with the 36 card, I do also want to say another wrinkle here is that there are other 66 Batman cards, including some really rare Monty Gum cards of the Adam West series. So you have the 66 cards of the comic book character, and you have 66 cards from the campy television show. Are the Adam West Batman cards also some sort of Batman rookie, or is that a different category of rookie? Just something else to think about. But in terms of the 36 card and that whole debate as to whether that could count as a rookie, my reaction to that is just very simply Batman, the comic character that you see on the right, first debuted in Detective Comics in 1939. It didn't exist in 1936. So to me, that 36 card cannot be a rookie of the comic book character in any event.
And where I see it too, and I've seen it from auction houses, there's a theory out there that this card possibly helped inspire the Batman character. But where I look at it is this set had a bunch of different types of like fictional characters or kind of things that are weird out there, right? Strange, true stories. So this is the first person dressing up as a bat, the Batman on a card. And this card is expensive, by the way, just to let you guys know. This card in a one right now, a few years ago, sold for about $5,000. It's a very tough card to source. The one on the right is plenty available if you only look for the Topps edition. Again, there is going to be the ABC. There's going to be the O-Pee-Chee. There's a fan club back for the ABC as well as the Netherlands back. But it's really what do you want to believe is the rookie card, right? Do you want to believe that someone dressed as a bat in the sky saying the Batman is the rookie? Or do you want to believe the 66? Or do you want to believe that the TV show adaptation, which probably should have been on the slide, there's a lot of choices out there, and every person's going to have a differing opinion on it.
Well, and the one other thing I would note, and I'm not the world's greatest expert on this, but I have seen a documentary that was made a couple years ago that was really good. I wish I could remember the name to recommend it to people, but it's on major streaming services. Much as there was controversy about who really invented Superman in 1936, there is massive controversy about the invention of Batman and where it came from. Bob Kane, who I believe that's his name, who is most often credited with creating Batman, there's now pretty substantial evidence that he heavily appropriated that idea from someone else. And I forget the gentleman's name, but that's the source of the subject of this documentary I've loosely referenced. So in terms of whether that 36 card, that image could have somehow been an inspiration for the ultimate comic character, you have the added wrinkle of who really invented the comic character, which just adds, it's just another example of sort of the complexity that you find in a lot of this that's not there when you're talking about when did Juan Soto get called up to the major leagues and when did they first make cards of him. It's a much simpler thing to answer than things like this.
Okay, here's another one for Batman side of things, pre-major set. So again, there's a ton of cards from 1966 of Robin, but then you have this 1949 Comic Stars, again, issued after we had the comics, but this was 17 years earlier.
Well, and for what it's worth, like if I'm going to play the rookie game, then I'm going to die on the hill that if the one on the left is truly the first card, then that's his rookie. Like first has to be first in my mind. And I know many people in the market don't like that, especially when the first thing turns out to be nearly impossible to find. And I get it that when that's the case, the market is going to solve for that by treating like the thing that's easier to find as the rookie. But technically it's not, right? And we're going to see some examples of that a little bit later. But to me, if you have to have a Robin rookie, damn it, then it's the one on the left, if that's the older one.
And what I will say too is I'm not an expert in the Comic Stars. I find it really interesting that there's a Robin that's been graded, but not Batman. And it says Batman's partner. In that set, also, you have Superman. So you have Superman in that set, you have Robin, but you don't have Batman. I'm sure it exists out there. Maybe it doesn't, and I'm completely wrong. But what would that happen? What would that do to the quote unquote Batman rookie market from 1966? Now you have two different cards. The 49 as well as the 36 that are competing for that title.
Well, and you can't be naive either, right? Like you have to
There's
realize
other stuff out there possibly too. Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, you got to realize that, especially when you're talking about Batman more than Robin, how much money is tied up in that 66 card and how much money is tied up in the assumption that that's the rookie. If something earlier comes out, there are a lot of people who could lose a lot of money who have put it into, high grade versions of that 66. So you have to be aware of those forces in the market too, that may try to shape this debate of what's considered a rookie, or ask yourself, are there certain constituencies that have a vested interest in this question being answered in a particular way for certain non-sports subjects?
Yeah, and I want to say the Batman 9 last year sold for what? Was it 30,000 or 40,000? I probably should.
It's a lot of money. I mean, I don't have that card and I would kind of like to get one, but I don't want a mid-grade one. I'd like to buy at least a 7. And that's like a 4-figure card. And an 8
Yeah, actually,
8 is a really expensive card.
I just record, or I didn't record, but I just finished prepping the non-sports video for January, and the 7 sold for $1,200
Yeah,
for Batman
yeah.
#1.
And so I've never wanted it that bad, but if I ever buy one, I'm probably going to have to spend, whatever the range is for like a really nice 6.5 or a 7 or something, because a lot of the ones below that are just really off center and it bothers me.
No, they definitely are. I think your value would probably be the 6.5 if you can find one of those. Which half grades are always tough, but
A well centered 6.5 would be the dream. Yeah.
okay. Here, how about this also? So I see the card on the right always floated as the Superman rookie card, but the Superman novelty candy, from what I've talked to other Superman collectors, this was issued earlier in the year than the Gum Ink set. And this is an interesting one. There's a full set of these, but this also has a tab here at the bottom. And some purists may say, oh, it has a tab. That's not a card. Look in baseball. People consider Z-Nuts cards, and they have coupon tabs at the bottom. There's plenty of other examples out there. But do you classify, and it's again with what we talked about with Batman, right? Multiple 1966 Batman cards out there. Are all those considered rookies? In this case, right, both of these should be considered Superman's rookie. And this doesn't even talk about all 72 cards in that Gum Ink set or
That's
all the other additional cards in the candy.
Right. That's the bigger issue for me is the card on the right, which everyone, pays ridiculous amounts for. And I was actually going to bring this, or I'll bring it up again later with respect to like some more modern movie releases, but it applies equally to the Batman card and to the Superman card. It's like if there are numerous cards of those characters issued in the same set that all came in the same packs, why is only one card a rookie? Like, I get it that card number 1 is going to have extra significance. And like the Batman card, if it's a character focused card, I understand why that has more appeal. But technically, if all those cards came out at the same time, why is only one a rookie? I at least think it's valid to ask a question whether that's appropriate. The other thing I just want to sarcastically note about that Superman card that everybody considers the Superman rookie isn't that exactly what everyone wants? Is a card of Superman that shows him freaking running on the ground like a normal human. Yeah, we want that to be the Superman rookie. I've just always thought that was absurd.
You cut out a little bit. It's probably my connection, but personally, I kind of like the design of the one on the left a little bit better, and it's way cheaper. The one on the right now is about $3,000 for one.
When did I cut out?
Oh, when we were talking about the design and how Superman is like on the ground.
Oh yeah, as long as that point was made, I'm good. Because yeah, I just always thought that was goofy. Like, of all the cards to glom onto as the Superman rookie, you pick one where he's running on the ground like anyone else. Like that made no sense to me. But I get it. It's card number 1. But again, like, just ask yourself, like, why? Why aren't other cards in that set also Superman rookies if that's like the first set to feature Superman? And do you necessarily, as a collector or a buyer, like, have to go along with that? And the other thing I'd say is notions in the hobby market change over time, right? Like, you're seeing this right now. This may date this a little bit, but with the fixation in the sports card realm about Panini Prism golds and black vinyls, like, that's all the obsession. That wasn't the obsession a few years ago. It may not be a few years from now. Just because some people want to say that's the only Superman rookie today, that may not be true 5 or 10 years from now. And be aware of that, again, when you're spending thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on some of these things because somebody calls them a rookie. That's a game of chicken with just time and market sentiment.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Superman set. I believe the last 12 are either short printed or they printed less. Card number 72 goes for about 1/3 the value of card number 1. It's just a tough card out there, and it's also the end of the set, so typically is a little bit more condition sensitive as well. But it's always 1 or 72. Don't really see many people collecting the other stuff, minus the set registry collectors that pay quite a bit for 5s, 6s.
Well, and if you are looking for value, the other thing I'd say, in this space, and I think there's a lot of value plays right now in vintage non-sport, and you might even be able to argue that really super popular cards like Superman and Batman are still value plays compared to what they could be someday if non-sport ever truly catches on like it potentially could. But when you have the market behaving in a way like that, if you kind of think it's silly, maybe some of the other like really good Superman images in that set that sell for a fraction of that one, maybe something like that is not a bad long-term value play. Like, I'm not trying to give people advice about what to buy. And I don't personally want those cards because I don't like Superman. He's uninteresting to me. He's too powerful. But iconic character. There's a lot of great cards in that set that the market seems to be ignoring. So I just note it as an example of, sometimes the herd is not right forever.
I'll let you do this one over here.
Yeah, this is another thing that comes up a lot in the TV and movie space. To make this point, we have to engage in a little bit of a fiction. Let's just say that the card on the left actually came out like a year earlier than all the cards on the right. That's not true. They're all from 1977. The blue Luke Skywalker obviously is super iconic. That's card number 1 in the very first series of these cards from 77. But for this point, let's just assume for the sake of argument that the ensemble card on the left comes out first. And then the next year, all of those individual character cards come out. What's the rookie for Luke Skywalker? What's the rookie for Princess Leia, Han Solo? Is it only the solo cards, pun intended? Is it the ensemble card? Is it both? And if it's both, what's the rationale for that? You will find instances sometimes where a certain actor or something like that will appear on a group card with other people who may have already had individual cards in other sets other times. And the question is that person's rookie, the one who's appearing on that card for the first time? Or do you have to wait till potentially a much later solo card for that person or that character for it to be a rookie? Again, there isn't really necessarily a right answer here. It's just being aware of the valid questions and the complexity and risk that uncertainty in the market can add. The reality is that most people in the non-sport market haven't thought of most of these things. Some have. I mean, it's not like we're unique geniuses about this or anything, but a lot of people haven't even thought through these things. They're just calling stuff rookies and slapping price tags on it or slapping down dollars to get it. And so just again, the overarching theme is be thoughtful before you just spend a bunch of your money.
Same thing over here too with different band member changes. So we already talked about Brian Johnson, but take a look at this Pink Floyd card, which is actually flipped. I'm taking a look at this right now. Wherever I grabbed the image, they flipped it. But Gilmore was not in that image. Gilmore is in the 1972 Panini. How about Fleetwood Mac? The most popular lineup for Fleetwood Mac was from the 1979 Universal, but there's earlier cards. We talked about the Circle Disc. Well, that is out there. And then you also have this Pop Token. I'm sure there's other 1970s Fleetwood Mac cards out over there, but that lineup has changed quite a bit over the years. So again, what would you classify as the rookie card? Some people would say, oh, I want to have Gilmore in their Pink Floyd card. Everything pre-Gilmore isn't true Pink Floyd. Well, you'd be 72, but also at the same side of things, you might say, first Pink Floyd card. Well, that's the 69 Bergman.
Right. But you don't want to mess with the Syd Barrett fans in terms of the early Pink Floyd. Those are some pretty dedicated people. But personally, I actually don't own the Pink Floyd card on the far left that has Syd Barrett in it. I do own the 72 Panini. That's actually my copy. I'm not that interested in Pink Floyd before David Gilmour came along. And actually, I believe Gilmour came along in late 68 or early 69, right as Barrett was leaving. but there are no cards or stickers that I'm aware of that have Gilmore as part of Pink Floyd featured until 72. And there are actually 3 German Bergman stickers that have Floyd pictured in 69, 70, and 71, but all with Sid Barrett instead of David Gilmour. I think the Pink Floyd or the Fleetwood Mac one is an even more potent example. It is true that those 2 cards on the right are the earlier Fleetwood Mac cards, really from what are they, like 1970 ish, 69,
70-ish, yeah.
70. But that was a completely different band then. They played completely different music.
Full on blues back then too.
Right. Pink Floyd is mostly known for like Rumors and what happened, once Christine McVie and Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham were in it. And that's the lineup that I believe was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's the lineup pictured on that 79 Warner Brothers card and a few cards that came after it in the very early 80s. But to me, that's Pink Floyd as I know it, as I want to remember it through my collection. But technically, the first card saying Fleetwood Mac, is much, much earlier. So pick your poison.
And as we mentioned, kind of like with the TV shows and movies, and also with Leonard Skinner, um, partial bands exist on some of the different cards, or you have one single person on a card in comparison to the whole group. Like personally with Van Halen, I know this is their Swedish Soul Mouse card. I do think they have some things a little bit earlier, but I see this label thrown all the time for the Van Halen that this is the rookie, but it doesn't even have the Van Halen brothers, which is kind of funny if you think about it. But
right, and if you just for the sake of the point, assume that is the first card that says Van Halen. I agree with you. I don't necessarily think that it is, but that is often identified as the Van Halen rookie. But when you're talking about a band, especially one that has a really famous guitarist too, and is the partial namesake of the band, like is a picture of David Lee Roth that says Van Halen, is that the Van Halen rookie? Or is it a later card or maybe even an earlier card that has everybody on it? Def Leppard the same way. I don't believe that card has Joe Elliott on it. Leonard Skinner, only 2 members there, but one of them is Ronnie Van Zant, the singer who died in the plane crash. Again, I don't think there is anything else for them that has more people. If there is, I don't know about it. Same concept for Seinfeld. That a lot of people want to call the Seinfeld rookie actually a Topps American Pie card that came out in 2011. And I really like that card too. I have a few varieties of it, different parallels and the like. And it is great because it shows all 4 of the main characters. But the first card that I'm aware of that actually features Seinfeld, the television show, is this one from 1995 from Australia that just has Jerry and Elaine on it. To me, if I had to say which is the Seinfeld rookie, I would say that one is because it's first, but it doesn't have everybody on it. Now, would I feel differently about that if there was a card from the show's original run that had all 4 characters on it? I might. But I don't like calling the 2011 one a rookie of any kind because that was issued like 12 years after the show ended.
also, what I want to say too with Van Halen is you have the Van Hagar era too. So
Yep.
Sammy Hagar came in what 85, so somewhere around there.
Yeah, it was 80. It was 85. That's when.
Yeah, so there's fans of Van Halen that
150
are huge
out.
Sammy Hagar fans, and there's some that are just David Lee Roth fans. Do you classify each era as specific rookie cards? Like this is the Van Halen David Lee Roth rookie. This is the Sammy Hagar Van Halen rookie, and also the third singer of Van Halen only had one album. We're not going to talk about that card wise, but regardless, frontmen do change in bands occasionally. Van Halen is a classic example of that. David Lee Roth wasn't part of Van Halen for a large part of the 80s. So
Right. And it's the same thing as the Led Zeppelin thing and not Led Zeppelin, the Pink Floyd thing. And also, as you have situations like AC/DC where like the original lead singer died, right?
Brian Johnson joins in, which we showed a little bit earlier with his pre-AC/DC card.
Right. And then, so you've got questions. And then even think about, something like Guns N' Roses, where, at one point, like Axl has kind of carried on that name without any of the other original band members, especially Slash, who's probably equally famous, is now there are Guns N' Roses cards that have the original lineup. So maybe that's not the best example, but you get that type of turnover in the music space a lot. You also get people getting, written off of TV shows and things like that, or killed off as movie characters. So you do have to ask yourself, are we going to call every different composition a rookie, a different rookie? And if not, like, when is it appropriate? Under what circumstances is it appropriate to do that? And it just underscores once again, there isn't, to date, there isn't like a Jefferson Burdick or a Jim Beckett figure in the non-sport space that's like taking those issues and trying to impose consensus and order on them. It's just the Wild West with different people applying their own subjective definitions of what's a rookie and then trying to sort of tacitly represent to the market that that's somehow agreed upon when it's not.
Another kind of funny example is Dave Grohl. The joke of, oh, did you know Foo Fighters singer was part of Nirvana? Well, yeah, he has his solo card from Nirvana in 1994, and you have a few different Foo Fighters cards from 2002. I just grabbed the Coachella one over here. We've talked about this quite a bit already, but again, just another example to show you guys. Presidency side of things, there's quite a few presidents that have cards before they were president. So Roosevelt has a ton of cards when he was president, but he has, I think, 3 or 4 from the 1800s. This is one of them right over here. War photographs from Duke. These are very tough to find. This is my own personal copy. But some people just want to collect president cards when they were in office. Some people want to have cards of any type of president. So what do you classify as the rookie, right? The first card when they're in office, the first image of them in general. And another
could I bring up one extreme example too? It isn't. Sure. It's actually a kindred conceptual example from the acting space. Like, I can't remember the specifics of this, but I remember encountering someone actually fairly notable in the hobby who was getting into non-sport cards. And I think it was Christopher Walken that he wanted to collect. And Christopher Walken has some, cards or stickers from like the 70s or 80s or whatever. But he had found in this old top set from like the 50s. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this right. If I'm not, my apologies. But I believe that Christopher Walken somehow has a card in a top set from the early 50s as a child actor, where he's actually his last name is different. He hadn't adopted his stage name yet. And this person considered that to be Christopher Walken's rookie card. I have some similar examples with Christian Bale. Like, a lot of people will say, like the Bruce Wayne, Christian Bale is Bruce Wayne card from the Batman Begins set in the early 2000s is the Christian Bale rookie. I actually have at least a couple of things of him from the late 80s when he was a child actor for the first time in Steven Spielberg's Empire of the Sun. So which one is the rookie? I mean, I would say first is first, but a lot of people don't want like chubby child Christian Bale. They want cool Bruce Wayne Christian Bale.
And solo performer versus previous part of group. The easiest example is the Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson has Jackson 5 cards from 1971 and has a handful of cards from 1972.
Right. Well, and this is an example we're going to get to for other reasons even later, because the market is confused with the assistance of PSA as to what is even the first, card featuring Michael Jackson. It's as far as we know, it's the one pictured there of the Jackson 5. But yeah, I mean, that raises another thing. Like, when somebody goes on to be like a very notable solo performer, is their rookie card the first, card of them in an ensemble, a group, or a band?
You have
And then,
Kanye and Taylor Swift on the American Pie rookie card that everyone always sits.
yeah, so this is another one where to make the point you have to like sort of suspend reality, at least as the Taylor Swift. Almost everyone in the marketplace will call, including, people like Jeff Wilson at Sports Card Investor, will call this the Taylor Swift rookie. It's not, if you actually want what cards of her are earliest in time, but let's just assume that it is. It is, as far as I know, the first Kanye card, although that may be wrong as well, because I'm certainly not a Kanye collector. But let's just say that's the first card featuring both of those people, or even one of them. Is that a rookie, given that they're both solo performers? They're appearing on a card with someone else, or is their rookie their first card by themselves, or is it both? Again, I don't know how you're all going to answer that. I will tell you that again that the market calls that Taylor Swift's rookie, and that's wrong if you're using first in time as the definition, but it is certainly the easiest thing to pick as her rookie, the most accessible card. And this point goes just quickly. This is really goes back to that thing with the Superman set. We were talking about the vintage Superman set. It's like some people, especially in like movie cards and TV cards, will want to say that there's only one rookie card of a character, and it's the first time that character appears in a set sequentially, or it's a character spotlight card only, and that all the other cards of that character in that set are not rookies. For Han Solo, the one they pick most often is the one in the middle top there, the horizontal card. To me, that card is not nearly as cool as the one to the left, the vertical card of him shooting as Han Solo. Both of those are from the same first series. I don't understand why one's a rookie and one isn't. The card on the right top, the yellow bordered horizontal card, that's another 1977 Han Solo card that I think is cooler than the one in the middle. I don't understand why that's not a rookie. Again, it's not first series, but it came out the same year as the ones in the first series. And then the wrinkle on top of that, a couple of examples are the two cards on the bottom, which are both 1977 Han Solo cards from other countries. The one on the left bottom is a Panini sticker, actually, from a really cool 1977 set. And the one on the right is another really cool pose. That's a Japanese card from 1977. So to me, like if we're going to play the rookie game, all of those are rookies to me because they're all Han Solo cards from the first year in which Han Solo cards were created. But you will find dedicated Star Wars collectors who insist that the only Han Solo rookie is the one in the top middle.
Now, another side of things is promo cards. And I know initially you put all the different TV shows in here, but I also want to add in the promo cards of musicians. So I believe the one over here to the bottom left of the Beatles is from 1962, 2 years before all the crazy Beatles sets. If you're not familiar with Beatles cards, 64, there's hundreds of different Beatles sets out there probably. They mass produce Beatles cards. But this was 2 years before they kind of exploded in popularity. This card itself, I want to say it sold for like $2,000 at the rock and roll auctions, 2 or 3,000. I'm working on 1960s video. The Hendrix over here to the bottom right is from 1967, which predates his Panini Cantanti. Typically, you see this 1968 label thrown around for Jimi Hendrix rookie card, but this promo card was issued 1967. I assume also kind of right before Hendrix fully exploded and why he's in the 68 set. But that card, I want to say sold for $4,000 or $5,000. What I do want to say too, be very careful with that card because there's already counterfeits of that out there. There's one on eBay that's listed for like a couple $100. It's a fake. They've been making fakes of this card for a while because it is so expensive, but it's a promo card of the Jimi Hendrix experience. Very common in music, and I'll let you talk about kind of TV and movies.
Yeah, that Hendrix, that's like a record label promo from the UK, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Track Record. There's two 67s from Track Record. There's also another 67 from Polydor.
Yeah, and that brings up a broader point. I mean, those are good examples about music, and it's something I'll talk about in a matter of slides about Taylor Swift too. I said that 2011 American Pie card is not really her first card. Well, what some aspects of the market have accepted are her first cards still may not be, because she has even earlier record company promo cards from years earlier yet. And so that does beg the question, what is a card? What is a rookie card? Are you going to consider a record label promo card like thing the same as like a trading card that was issued as a trading card? I think those are all very interesting questions. In terms of some of the others on here, you have the Tony Soprano one in the upper left is interesting. There's a lot that I don't know about that, but what I do know is it was issued 3 years earlier than the I can't remember if I think it's Inkworks. I always sometimes get like Inkworks and Rittenhouse confused, but I think the first Sopranos, like full blown set from the series, came out in 2005, and it was either Inkworks or Rittenhouse. A lot of people will say that the Tony Soprano focus card, character focus card from that, I think it's card number 2 from that 2005 set, is the Tony Soprano rookie. Well, this HBO promo card was issued 3 years before that. They're really rare. There's only like a handful, like less than like single digits of them ever graded by PSA. But it is first, right? And so is that a rookie card? Is it some sort of XRC, to use the term that Jim Beckett came up with in the 80s that still gives a lot of people nightmares? I don't know. That Lost card there was some sort of convention exclusive that came out before the show. I believe that Tarantino from Alias, I think that's a promo card that's actually earlier than that graded Tarantino card from Alias that I showed a few slides ago. The Field of Dreams and the Matrix cards are promo cards for home video releases after the movies actually came out. But to my knowledge, those are the only cards for those films that actually date too close to the movie's original theatrical releases. So are those rookie cards? Are they XRCs? Are they something else?
So card dating line spots. I've talked about this quite a bit on different podcasts before, but this 1969 Michael Jackson is a 1973 card. Somewhere along the way, someone thought this last series of Vedettin was 69 when it's really a 73 album. It's been clearly defined as 1973 for a while. There's tons of resources online. Someone got lazy, slapped a label on it, 1969, we're good to go, and didn't realize how much of an impact this has, because this Michael Jackson card, I want to say it sells for like at least over $100 right now, $200 even maybe. And people pay more for this than some of his first cards, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
One mistake a great to make, and we'll go over other mistakes in a second, which are even funnier. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I just want to say a couple things about the Michael Jackson card in particular. It is a real thing, because I remember hearing like kind of a mixed sports, non-sports collector appear on a notable podcast maybe like a year ago, and his thing was collecting first cards of historically notable people in sports and non-sports. And he actually called specific attention to that card and said, oh, here's Michael Jackson's rookie. And by that time I had seen your raw copy of the 71 Bergman Jackson 5 card sticker card. So I knew that existed, and I privately contacted him and said, that's not actually Michael Jackson's first card, even though PSA says it's from 69. And the thing is, like, he was only interested in rookie cards. So that was like a big deal to him. Like, he not only had he paid more because he thought that was Michael Jackson's rookie, like he didn't even necessarily want it once he found out that it wasn't. And so that's a big boo-boo. I would also note Elton John's in the same exact boat. Elton John has a card from that, or slash sticker from that Vedette and Parade set that I believe is from 73 that PSA calls 69. Much like Michael Jackson, I believe Elton John
Is in the Bergman, yeah,
He's
1970.
he's in Bergman Verlag from 71, and there's another German set that I believe sticker set that I believe dates to 71 called something like Schlager, and
Yeah,
there's also an Elton John in that. But his two first things are actually from 71, not 69, not 73. The additional layer of irony about that Michael Jackson piece right there is that's not even Michael Jackson's first solo thing. If you want to set aside, as we may see in a couple slides, if you want to set aside even that Jackson 5 thing, he has other solo cards and stickers from 1972. And then those Queen things are pictured right now because for a very, very long time, and PSA has done this with numerous like multi-year sets, including this one from Sweden that those um, Queen cards are from. They will take 1 year in a multi-year set and call all cards from all years as having been issued in 1 year. And they did that for the longest time with this Swedish set, which is called like Samlarsaker or something like that, or Samlasakar or something. They would say that all of them came from 1978, even though they could have come from anywhere between like 74 and 83. One of those, although I know it's hard to see, one of those versions of the very same Queen card is called 1978. More recently, and I don't know if they got some checklists or what, or they just got a more knowledgeable head grader. But more recently, at least within that Swedish set, they have started to differentiate the cards according to the years in which they were actually released. So now, if you send that card in, it's going to say 1975, although there are others out there that say 1978. I will give them credit that from what I can tell, they are merging the pop reports for those things. So if you look up either the 75 or 78, they should appear in a common pop report. That isn't always true when PSA makes that mistake. The other thing I want to note before we move on, and I know you've called this to my attention numerous times, this misdating thing. Well, there are a couple of nefarious things about it. One, people can assume the grading companies are more infallible than they are and can conclude the rookie must be the first thing for this person or this movie or whatever that PSA grades. You should not blindly trust them like that. The other thing is some of these card misdating mishaps create absurd scenarios where they'll have a card of a person like years before their career actually began. Okay.
Yeah, here we go. So
here. Yeah.
I actually want to go through these because I think they're pretty funny. So we'll start
Well,
off.
and I would just add that Sinatra is another one that isn't on here. He's another notable example.
Yeah, so we'll start off with Mark Spitz. So I know Olympics, this is not sports. A very famous swimmer, won multiple gold medals and things like that. Well, there's a set for famous Jewish athletes and people out there. And I believe there's two sets of it. One's in 63, one's in 73. PSA labeled all of them as 1963. Well, here's the problem. Mark Spitz was born in 1950. Does this look like a 13-year-old? His first Olympics also was in 1968. Again, 2 seconds of research. Oh, we have a Mark Spitz card. Oh, well, Mark Spitz's first Olympics was in 1968. There's no shot this is a 60. And this is a newly graded set also, which is, in my opinion, hilarious. Again, does this look like he's 13 years old?
Right.
All right, let's talk about
the laziness issue, the laziness of the research issue. Like, again, the Michael Jackson is a great example of that too. It's like the Jackson 5 was first, is quote unquote discovered and promoted by Diana Ross in 1969. If you do any research, you'll see that the Jackson 5 1971 piece that we pointed to where they're in the green outfits. That photo is actually from 1969. And you can figure that out in 10 seconds on Google. You can also figure out that the picture of him on the so-called 1969 card that's actually from 1973, like he couldn't possibly have looked like that in 1969 because he was 11. And so that photo, there are tons of photos of him that look like they do on that card PSA calls 69. Those photos are from like 72, 73, 74, when he was getting closer to like 14, 15 years old. That's fairly obvious just from a common sense eye test standpoint.
Now let's talk about another one. Elvis Presley. Man, they really messed up Elvis. So Elvis was born in 1935. He recorded his first hit single in 1954. So we have two specific dates that we could go off of. Well, up first, we have a 1950 Elvis, 15 years old, right? Hasn't even recorded a song yet, but we have a card from 1950. How about this one when he's in the military in 1952? Again, previous to recording a song, no one knows who Elvis Presley is in 1952. Maybe his family and friends, right? But he's not getting a set, and he wasn't in the military in 1952. How this gets out of quality control and is out there. And by the way, this is a new Lighthouse label on the one at the bottom too. It's not like this was graded 15, 20 years ago. The one slab to the top right sure was graded a while ago, but regardless, they're still on the market. And when I do the non-sports series on the channel, I see people pay a big premium for some of these 52 or 50 Dutch cards, quote unquote 52 or 50, because they think it's the Elvis rookie. Oh, this is way before the 1956 Topps Elvis set. How? You think Elvis had cards before he even sang a song? Does that look like he's 15 years old?
And those aren't even the only examples. I saw an egregious Elvis one the other day when I, knew we were going to be doing this soon. I believe it was also the newer Lighthouse label. And it was a Dutch gum card like that, but it was him and an actress from one of his films. It's like, okay, Elvis could not, and it was labeled 1952. And it's like, Elvis could not have been starring in a movie before he became a music star. Like, why seriously, people? And that's the expertise we're supposed to trust. I saw a Sinatra one the other day, like where the card was labeled like 1939 or 1940 or something. Or it was, in any event, I can't remember if his first single was like in 39 or 49. I think it was 39 or 40. And the card was labeled as from 1930. So in any event, it was like 9 years before he ever even had his first like hit single on the radio. And it's like, come on, guys. Like, again, Google.
I was gonna say, I don't know if I put this on the next slide or not, and I'm mad I didn't put this in here. Did you see the one recently that SGC and PSA are labeling as a 1910 Mickey Mouse card? The one from 1930 or 1928, I'm iffy on those dates, but now they're labeling a Mickey Mouse as 1910, way before Walt even started thinking of Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, I mean, Walt Disney Company wasn't even founded until 1923. So I don't, and he didn't create Mickey Mouse until 1928. So, but also, you know what? It's not just the grading company's fault. It's the fault of the people who just thoughtlessly accept whatever PSA slaps on a label. You yourself can do 10 seconds of research and figure out that that's impossible.
Yeah. All right. So I'll let you go on this one.
Well, and this is kind of that point, right? Like, and a point that we brought up in various ways throughout. Like my major desire to be part of a discussion like this and create this content that can hopefully be sitting out there for a long time is just, and what has driven me to be so passionate about writing some stuff and talking about this issue is just the complete overuse, abuse, misuse of the rookie card label as applied to non-sport cards, especially in places like eBay, but even in content from other, non-sport content creators and alleged or self-purported experts. I don't think all of it is intentional by any means. I think some of it is and designed to mislead people. I think some of it is due to just ignorance. I think where maybe people aren't taking enough steps to try to conduct the research or pull other collectors and dealers that are available as a learning tool. I think some of it is due to laziness. But regardless of what the motivation is, there's just a lot of misinformation out there. I mean, there are some eBay sellers that will, I'm not exaggerating when I say I think they just call every non-sport card that they have for sale a rookie and just kind of assume that nobody will know the difference. And again, I don't think that's always nefarious. It may just be lazy or expedient or whatever, but it's not accurate. And it's not even a legitimate attempt to be accurate in a lot of instances. And then every once in a while, you and I will see somebody who we know knows the difference, and they're still calling something a rookie that we know they know is later than the first thing that most people know about. And so you just got to be very
cough cough seeing the 69 doors at a card show labeled a rookie card. Cough cough.
Right. That's probably one of the more egregious examples. After that person had liked, me showing off the 68 on Instagram and things like that. But in any event, that's the sort of stuff that we're trying to combat here. I mean, there are people who will prey on your lack of knowledge or the general lack of knowledge or misinformation. That's true here as in any area of the hobby, but it is harder to educate yourself in this space than it is in the sports card space by and large. And that's why you just have to be extra careful before you smash buy it now, ask around to other collectors or dealers, ask us, and we can, if we don't know, we probably know somebody who does. Before you spend significant money in this space on something that is alleged to be a rookie, I would ask some people who may be more experienced than you before you just throw a bunch of money at something like that. And we're going to see a number of examples here on the following slides where the market consensus is just wrong as to what's first for these subjects.
Billy Joel, 1980 Panini versus the 78 Edith jeans. I still think Joel has other stuff from the 70s, but it hasn't really surfaced as of yet. I do have the 80 Panini. I don't have the 78 jeans card. One day I'll get the jeans, but
I have the jeans card. I used to have a PSA 8 of the Panini. I sold it. I kind of regret that now. I'd kind of like to get it back, but I don't want to pay a rookie premium for it because I know it's not his first thing. I also agree. I'm aware of at least one other thing from Joel in 1980, and there are also some stickers from the company called Joepie. I think it's might be pronounced like whoopee in Belgium, but it looks like Joppy or something. There are a couple Joel stickers that have really early photos in those sets that may be from like 78 or 79, but they also could be from 80 or 81. It's just so hard to date some of that stuff.
And then what we've talked about so much in this podcast, so we won't have to talk about it too much. Michael Jackson, this 1969 versus the 71 Bergman or the 72 Tip Top EMIs. He has two EMIs in that set. Also, he has multiple Jackson 5 cards in that set as well. Again, go after what you like.
One important thing about Jackson, both Jackson 5 and individual cards, and I want you to speak to this because, I mean, I have some of what I'm about to mention, but I think you're more expert at dating which series came from which year. There are also a number of Jackson 5 and solo Michael Jackson pieces in Monty Gum sets.
There is. Those are 72s.
Yeah, they're often called 72s, but I know some of those that are called 72s are actually from 73 and 74. So do you think the Jackson ones are actually from 72?
I believe because those are the orange or yellow bordered ones.
Yeah, and there's a really apparently rare variant that's pink bordered as well.
It's either 72 or 73. I always have to have my reference guide next to me for Monty Gums because it can be confusing at times. I have the Alice Cooper in that set too.
But the thing is, like, this is one of those instances where what is probably truly his first thing, the thing on top, the 71 Jackson 5, that's just so damn rare that most people won't find it, right? Like, I'll just say, people can think this is crazy, but I believe that's his first thing. That's a really rare example of that has the original back. It was never peeled. It's the only version that's been graded by PSA to date. I paid $1,500 for that, which is probably insane to most people, but I'm taking the chance that that is truly his first thing. It
And
may
to
not
add,
be.
I want to add to it also, not all grading companies will grade that card when the back is removed. So
Right.
I got my copy graded by CGC, and I still paid up, by the way, for the copy without a back. PSA and SGC will not grade it if it does not have a back. Something I wish would change, because if you think about the rules, someone can paste a Venezuela baseball card or a South American baseball card or anything like that into an album. They can remove it from the album and they can get those graded today. But if a sticker card, which truly was meant to be pasted into an album, is removed, it won't have its back. I should specify specific sticker cards that you could remove the back. Those, if they're pasted into an album after the back was removed and you take them out of the album, well, they don't have the back anymore. My opinion, those should get an authentic grade, and on the label a sticker used or back removed or something along the lines of that, because it's truly not fair to get those rejected when they were used for their intended purpose.
I agree, and that 71 Bergman set is a particularly poignant example because until very recently, there was actually a few caches of complete, almost pack fresh versions of those that surfaced in the last 6 months from various sources in Germany. Not a lot of them, but the ones that are graded as complete all came from those finds by American music card dealers from German sellers. But before that, to the extent you could find any of those, you always found them without the backs, or virtually always. I had never seen a complete one before these batches just surfaced from Germany. So I agree. I think you should be able to have those graded as authentic. The Well, yeah, I definitely feel that way. When all I had of the doors from that set was one without the original back, I still wanted it to be gradable. The other thing I wanted to mention, the other little wrinkle about those Bergman sets regarding this stickability issue, is they're kind of interesting in that there are Bergman sets from Germany featuring music stars from 69, 70, 71. They appear to get rarer as you go further in time. So the 71 set is rarer than 70, is rarer than 69. But the 69 and 70 sets have printed backs and the fronts cannot be peeled off. They were still stickers in that there were albums issued and you were supposed to manually glue them, and you often find them with back damage having been removed from albums. But the 71s create this particular problem because they actually could be peelable. The one other thing I'll say about the 71s, because it's a very desirable set, like it has the first things of some very important people, not just potentially Michael Jackson, but that glue that they used on the self-adhesive surface tends to seep through the front over time. And so even a lot of these like seemingly pack fresh examples have discoloration around the border on the front from that glue seeping through, which is why a lot of them are getting like mid grades. You know, the batches that I've seen graded by the handful of those that surfaced, most of them get like 4 to 7s. And I think a lot of them that get lower grades, because they're all really sharp in terms of corners. Some of them are off center, but a lot of them have that discoloration that I think is caused by the chemical compound of that glue.
And I've seen that as well with the ones that have been peeled off too. My Jackson 5, as well as Deep Purple is like that. Okay, this is
This is the example that inspired this video. Like I had just
such a
had
fun one.
enough.
We had to put this one in here, but everyone always says, "Oh, the '95 Panini Nirvana is the rookie card," and you have these over here. So first off, if I had to specifically say something was a rookie card, I would probably say the closest to the definition would be the 1992 Genki. Not only is Genki a big manufacturer out of Finland, they made a bunch of other sets throughout the 60s and 70s, etc. these in particular, the music cards were distributed by Leaf. So not only do you have two major manufacturers backing them as well, they were pack pulled. You know exactly what year those were specifically out of. The next ones over here, the year on these are iffy. I've seen people label these as 1990, which I disagree with that label just based off of when Nirvana blew up, and also at the same side of things, would they really have an international issue from they toured there blow up? I don't think that would be the case. In reality, it's probably a 92 or a 93 release. Again, nothing wrong with that. But
by the way, those photos were not on the things that are always called 1990. Those photos weren't even taken until 1991, so they can't be 1990.
Yeah, and then up next you have one from Australia. These were kind of perforated from books. I've seen one full page before one of my friends ended up purchasing that. Again, super tough to find those. I paid like $300 a few years ago for my copy, which is kind of shoddy. And then they have another 1993 card out of Italy. It has one of the earliest Pearl Jam cards from that set. And then you have this 1994 from Argentina, where they also have all the solo cards of the different members of Nirvana in there. I showed you the Dave Grohl a little bit earlier. That is from the same set. And then you have this 1995 Panini, which people say is the rookie card. It makes no sense.
Yeah, on the 70 or the 92 Australian smash hits there that came in the magazine, I actually bought a magazine that had the complete panel of the 4 cards in that too, and I separated that one. So, and it's still not totally mint, they're effectively hand cut, because unfortunately the problem is that the top border, the side border that's affixed to the page in the magazine, is perforated. It comes apart very easily. Unfortunately, the top border is not. So you essentially have to like kind of rip it apart and or, cut it smooth. They designate them, I think CGC grades them, right? And they designate them as hand cut, which is appropriate because there's no way to get it to look right if you just rip the top border, where it's attached, because it's not perforated. But to me, that's my favorite of all the early cards. I actually own all those pictured there. I don't think I have. I know the Pearl Jam set you're talking about from Italy because I have the Pearl Jam, but I don't believe I have the Nirvana from that set.
And I was going to say, I haven't seen the Nirvana hit market. I've been searching for that card for 5+ years, probably. I have never seen it on eBay. I've had saved searches.
I'd really like to find one of those too, but yeah, I don't believe I've ever seen that. I'm not sure I even knew Nirvana was in that set till you just said that.
I was lucky enough to find the Pearl Jam, and I paid like $200 for the Pearl Jam one, which again, just showing you guys, it's a super scarce set. And they're also paper thin, like you hold them to light seeks right through them. Again, another video for another day talking about all these type of cards and really in detail. But just to show you guys, like there's at least 6 documented Nirvana cards before, well, more than 6 when you include all the individual band members. But
I do want to say one more thing about how that inspired this. And again, I don't want to mention this individual's name, but it does pee off, and I've tried to address it with him personally and kind of gotten sort of flippant responses like nobody can understand any of all that complexity. Like, you're right, but I don't care kind of attitude from a non-sport content creator. Like, it's my show, I can say whatever I want. But even recently, this individual did a focus video and about that 95 Nirvana and called it the rookie. And then without really knowing what he was talking about, kind of dismissively said, oh, and there's some other foreign issues that are created on milk cartons or something, but this is really the rookie because it was pack pulled. Well, number one, these Panini stickers were issued in Europe. They're from Italy. So they weren't pack pulled in America. Now, maybe some of them were imported or something, but it's not like that's an American card or anything. It's a sticker from Italy. Number two, as Ryan went through all those other earlier examples, none of those were on a milk carton or came with food or anything. And 2 of them, at least, the one in the upper left and the one in the lower right, well, actually, the white ones on top too, all of them were pack pulled.
Yeah.
They're all pack pulled. It's only the one in the lower left that was like distributed, in like Sports Illustrated for kids type fashion in a magazine. So it makes me mad when people who should know better or at least have perceived expertise in this space sort of say things like that are just flagrantly untrue, inaccurate. And then when you call them on it, are sort of flippantly dismissive, like, oh, no one really cares what the facts are. This makes a good video. And this is the one people can find. So that's the easiest one to call a rookie. Nobody's gonna understand all that nuance. Maybe, but just then buyer beware. Because if you're gonna pay that 95 Nirvana Panini thing on the left, that is massively overprinted. I'm not saying it's easy to get like a PSA 9 or 10. They're condition sensitive and a lot of them are trashy, but that is not a rare card. It is not that desirable of a card compared to any of them on the right to hardcore music collectors. Just know that.
Another fun one over here. You're more of an expert on this than I am.
Yeah, so I collect Madonna as one of my featured players. So the card on the left is 85 Panini Smash Hits. That's the one the market will always call her rookie. It is definitely the most accessible one. But the one in the middle is from another much rarer Panini issued set from 1985, the same year. Don't usually see it called the rookie as much. It's not ghostly like the one we're going to talk about next, but it's much rarer. I actually like that photo better than the Panini Smash Hits one on the left, personally. So to me, if a rookie is going to be considered from 85, then both of those have to be rookies, as are several other Madonna cards from 1985. But the real kicker here is the one on the far right is actually from 1984. And as we found on a live stream, I think the first time I've ever appeared on your show, we found out from somebody in your chat that I knew that was from a very rare set called Rock Blocks that was somehow distributed through a large grocery store chain in Australia called the Coles supermarket or something like that. It's not Coles like we have, it's COLES. But that was issued as part of, I believe, a 12 card, maybe 15 card set through the Coles grocery store chain or supermarket chain in Australia in 1984, again called Rock Blocks. It's clearly earlier because if you look at the text on the back, it doesn't reference Like a Virgin at all. It was clearly written before Like a Virgin was ever released, and that was released later in 1984. So that is her first thing that is currently known. It's super rare. I've only seen two ever, including that one, which I was lucky enough to be able to purchase. There have to be more out there, but a lot of those Australian cards, are really rare. They weren't kept, and if they were, they're trashed. That one has some major condition issues too. But again, that's technically her first card. I realize that anybody in wanting to collect Madonna now, if you don't think that notion is fanciful and ridiculous, like you may never find that card. You might search your entire collecting lifetime and never find one of those 1984 cards. That is possible. It is really rare as of now. Maybe a cache of them will turn up. But to me, still first is first, right? Like, I don't think you can distort the rookie card rules to account for abnormal situations like that, where something is out there and people know it's out there. At least some people do. There's a record of it, but most people can't get it. It either is first or it isn't.
And this also happens with other bands out of Australia. One band that doesn't have a lot of cards out there, but when I was talking to someone, they have Australian cards, is Steely Dan. I actually picked up one out of Australia too, but they have a few others out of there. For some reason, they weren't in America, which was bizarre to me because they seem to be pretty popular. I do like their music. Additionally, AC/DC has some super rare regional issues in the mid 70s. I've asked all my Australian resources. I've had saved searches for 5+ years. I've gotten no leads at all. And
that's different from the AC/DC Scanlon's cards from
correct.
Australia that are also quite rare, right?
Yeah. And so there's earlier stuff than that. I want to say it's almost a ghost because I've been looking 5 years and I've talked to a few people in Australia and there's no leads on it, unfortunately. I want to have it for my collection. Um, Maybe one day. We'll see.
Well,
Uh,
and that raises the point too that some of this stuff, when you find out it theoretically exists,
you got to
like
buy it.
you got to buy it if you see it, even if it's ripped in half. It may be like that honest. I'm not saying it's going to be worth millions of dollars, but it's sort of the same principle as why would somebody buy a ripped in half Hannes Wagner, T206? Well, because that may be the only one you get, and that principle holds true with some of this like ultra ghostly non-sports stuff, especially in music. We can go through some of these quicker. Again, everybody says card on the right from 1939 is Judy Garland's Rookie. That's a British tobacco card. It's not at all hard to find. All the five on the right are ones I own. I believe they're all from 1938. Um, a couple of those are really ghostly. A couple others you actually could find. It's a picture from a film she did in, I believe, 37. At least one of those has writing on the back, has text that mentions movies she was in 35, 36, 37, but not Wizard of Oz, which I would expect if any of them were from 39. It's possible maybe a couple of those came out in 39 instead of 38. But even if so, then they're like a co-rookie card to the one on the left, which is, again, hard to find in elite condition, but not hard to find at all. It's a fairly ubiquitous card.
And then your Taylor Swift stuff.
Yeah. So again, we've gone over the American Pie card on the far left, and then some people will say then the Top Trumps 2015 card next to that is like her first solo card. All of the cards on the right hand side, the reality side, predate that. The circular one in the middle is a record company promo from 2006. She has another even rarer, way rarer record company promo from 2006, or maybe it's a promo she herself had made. It's a rectangular card that she would autograph and hand out to people on the streets of Nashville before her first album came out. So that those raise like the promo card as rookie card thing. Um, all of the other cards pictured around it, except the one in the lower right, are from 2009 from European German music magazines. Most of them are Bravo. One is called Yeah, I believe. And then the one in the lower right is a 2010 Bravo card. So all of those predate the 2011 American Pie card that everybody today calls her rookie.
And then I guess just lack of comprehensive resources, right? There's currently like no repository of every single card out there. There never will be. I mean, someone could technically, theoretically build out something and continually update it. But again, with we talked about rare issues, like even out of Australia, chances are there's stuff that no one knows about. It just the beast of non-sports. Baseball is lucky to have one discovery a year. Non-sports, it feels like there's new things discovered monthly. Even more if you're in a bunch of different types of niches. But if you want to start taking a look at some places, you can look at ComC sold out listings. You can look at trading card database. You can look at specialty websites like moviecard.com. You can look at pop reports on PSA. But just remember, no resource is going to be perfect. Each of these may have examples, but they could still have dates wrong. Things aren't updated over time when new knowledge is brought into the non-sports space. So always do your research. Always ask other people their opinions on the side of things because it's tough.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is, in terms of pop reports and the like too, not only have we touched on and hammered on the misdating of certain cards by grading companies, but there's also the inconsistency among the companies between what they will grade and what they will not. For some reason, PSA like won't grade those Bravo cards, like those earlier Taylor Swift cards. SGC used to. Now, since PSA bought them, they won't. There are other 80s music magazine cards. There's great cards. I love them. Smaller cards from a magazine called Frida in Sweden that issued music cards throughout the 80s and even into the early 90s, maybe even back into the late 70s. SGC used to grade those. Now they won't. PSA won't. Coincidentally, SGC stopped doing it after PSA acquired them. You know that there are certain cards, like even I think that Nirvana Australian Smash Hits one, like CGC will grade some,
Yeah,
even though
so
SGC won't, and it's just
SGC
kind of
would
crazy.
SGC wouldn't grade the Genki. CGC graded that. SGC was able to grade the smash hits out of Australia.
Oh, they do grade that one.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
and I
good
was
to
gonna
know.
say too, like I send a lot of stuff to SGC. I Steven, who does the SGC reveals, doesn't share it on these videos because I don't think many people get a lot of value from it. But we really do get anywhere from 10 to 20% of the cards that we send in, they get rejected. Obviously, we don't show it in the videos, but like it's kind of disappointing as a non-sports collector to send in stuff and get those rejections. Again, I don't own the grading companies; it is fully on them, and I do understand the liability of like what happens if they grade a fake set or like the whole CGC scandal right now of Pokemon cards, right? If they're not confident enough, sometimes they don't want to grade it, and I completely understand it. But in terms of growing non-sports or growing the hobby, terms like 10x get thrown around. You really have to start grading niche cards. You're a grading company. You're supposed to research. You're supposed to authenticate. It feels like the research side of things is kind of gone away over the years.
Well, and one thing that bothers me too about PSA in particular is, I mean, I know people that have sent in like those Bravo cards, like those Taylor Swift cards that I showed from the music magazines in Germany. Okay, there are now people paying thousands of dollars for those raw. I actually have a couple of the 2009s graded by SGC from when they still did it. Um, but like PSA won't do that now, even when people send in like the magazines that they came in, and they can verify like these were distributed, in this issue of this magazine in this year. These, these are collectible cards that people in the market are paying thousands of dollars for raw, and yet we won't grade them, but we'll grade a very, very similar thing of Pele from like 1959. I would say why? What's the distinction?
And we kind of talked about it. Can it be charted? I mean, I know you don't think it can be. I think to some extent it can be charted as long as new resources are out there and someone continues to update a database. But realistically, it's never going to be perfect. And that's kind of what we've been preaching this entire video. You can have an idea of what's the first card, or if you want to throw the rookie card label out there, but there's always new things that can be discovered. 50 plus countries, over 150 years of cards. Nothing will ever be perfect.
Right, and you'll never know everything for sure. I mean, we both know several individuals who are, dealers in the space who know as much about this stuff as almost anyone other than maybe somebody like Ian. And they still several times a year something will come their way where they're like, oh, I thought that person's like first card was in 1977, and now I just found something from 1974 from some other country that I didn't even know like issued this set. That still happens to people that have been doing this for decades. And I think we both agree that that's sort of frustrating. It's also really exhilarating. I like that about the non-sport space, that as long as I am able to live and keep doing this, I'll never know everything I probably want to know. And there will always be that sense of discovery. That's one of the reasons why I kind of migrated almost entirely from sports, because I got bored with sports
It's fun.
cards. I know most people won't give up sports and do non-sports uh, exclusively, and you don't have to. I mean, I'm not advocating for that, but I did because I love that uncertainty and that constant discovery and the reward of research. I started buying some of those Taylor Swift cards um, when they were like $100 a piece before the market really knew about them, and I've sold a couple of them for like $2,000, $2,500 a piece. Like that was my reward for looking into that and being early to that space.
And what the sad thing is, it still might be a little bit too early on that side of things, especially since most people don't know those Bravos exist. But
Yeah, agree. There's some nutty money being paid, but it's just an example of like there is opportunity in this space.
oh, there always is. And yeah, I would say even my collecting focus, when I started the YouTube channel, it was 100, I wouldn't say 100%, probably 90% sports. But now I'm 80-20. I'm 80% non-sports, 20% sports. And I find it's a good balance. I just love the non-sports side of things. It's interesting to me. Again, baseball, everything has been documented. Maybe a card here or there, a new set gets discovered. Non-sports, every single month you're learning something new.
Well, and this could get ruined too over time, but I would say that another thing, and this was really underscored to me by a sports card collector, a baseball card collector who started buying some of the Taylor Swift stuff, and I kind of struck up a friendship with him. And he's just so excited because he's feeling like a lot of the things that sort of drove him out of sports cards, the gambling stuff and the obsession with money, even in the vintage space, and the sort of competitive hostility you can encounter. He's like, I'm not finding that over here. Like, people are much more supportive and, sharing of information, and not everything's just eke the last dollar out of it. And I know not every pocket of sports card is, and there are definitely some sharp operators in the non-sport space, but by and large, even though non-sport collecting has been around basically as long as baseball cards have, if not longer, that part of the trading card collecting hobby is much more immature and undeveloped and sort of just organic, like maybe baseball card collecting was in like the 70s and earlier. And, so I just say, and it dovetails with this last slide, like, why collect this stuff at all if there's all this uncertainty and everything? There's a lot of great cards. I mean, we have examples here of cards from literally like the 30s through the 2000 aughts. There's just an infinite range of subject matter you can collect. Most people are interested in something beyond sports, whether it be history or travel or state flags. Maybe you can find cards for that, but definitely movies, TV, music, all of those things have like a rich history in non-sport cards and things that we have to call cards, for going back again, literally like 150 years. And yet it's often overlooked. I do think it's also an opportunity potentially to find points of connection with like friends and family members who maybe don't like sports enough to want to collect sports cards. I've found that with my daughter. There are several things in movies and TV and music, including Taylor Swift, that I collect with her, because that's what she's interested in. And I think it's probably a lot of the same things that draw people to things like the TCG space as well. So, we want you and encourage you, if you have any predilection, to think about exploring some non-sport stuff. If you want to be obsessed with so-called rookies, that's your prerogative. Just do so knowing the potential risks and complexities. But I really do think that if a lot of people dabbled in this, especially if maybe they're hitting a wall in their enjoyment of sports card collecting, it can be reinvigorating for a lot of people. It was for me. I'm not sure I'd still be in the hobby if I hadn't started down some of these non-sport rabbit holes, but I'm really glad I am.
I think you said it perfect. And one last thing I'll say is, I was thinking about this towards the end. I'm like, man, I should have had an example of the Statue of Liberty having cards produced before it was even built versus post being built, because that happens sometimes with some of the monuments. But
that's interesting.
Or the U.S. flag, pre 50 stars versus previous, right? I mean, there's so many different rabbit holes on this side of things.
Because inanimate objects have to have rookie cards, right? Like, we have to settle what is the rookie card of early versions of the American flag. Like, the market cries out for that.
Yeah, so I thought that'd be fun to do, and also animals too. Like, what's the first Eagles card or eagle card, or what's the first rabbit card or specific dog breed? Man, there's just so many rabbit holes. But regardless, I find it fun. I think the community here is way better than a lot of stuff that happens in the sports card community. But it is what it is. What I will say is a lot of your non-sports collectors, they are just so devoted to this stuff. Like, they live and breathe non-sports cards, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, and again, a lot of those people have way more experience than me. So again, if I've said anything inaccurate, my apologies and please correct me. Like I want to keep learning all the time, and I am coming at this subject matter with a little bit of self-righteousness, right? Like saying, hey, one of the reasons I was inspired to or motivated to speak out about all this at length and put all this thought into it is I feel like people are just spreading a lot of inaccurate information, whether they mean to or not. And so I certainly don't want to be guilty of that myself. So, um, you know, correct us or me if we're wrong. And also, I do encourage you, feel free to reach out to either of us through the means we've provided if you ever have questions. If you want to ask, like, hey, I'm interested in this band or something, or this actor, like, do you know of anything earlier than this? We'll be happy to try to help you as best we can.
Yeah, and thank you guys for checking out this video. I think this is almost 2 hours. Look at my phone, I can't believe it. But wow, if you made it to the end, thank you, because I know this was a bunch of information, and you probably learned quite a bit throughout this video. So let us know kind of what you found the most interesting part in this video is, and kind of what other non-sports videos you want to see me or both of us make in the future, because again, there's so much to talk about within this space. I would find it interesting to talk about card types. Maybe someone watching this thinks that's boring, should talk about something else in more detail. And I'm also trying to make this decades video where I talk about the top 25 most valuable. And as I reiterate, right, it's not a definitive list, but I try my best every month to make 25 cards within this decade. What are they out there? And I'm sure I've definitely missed some stuff there. But
Well, and truly, the last thing I'll say here is I do want to give you an awful lot of credit. As somebody who is interested in this stuff, you put a lot of time and effort into producing the content you do. A lot of it is really, really educational, and it may not all be for me, right? Like, I'm not as in to the historical figure stuff as you and many other people are, especially the really old stuff. But I still enjoy watching those videos and learning about that stuff, even if I don't want to personally collect it. And I think not only is there value in all the information you're putting out there, but even to the extent you trigger someone out there to say, hey, that's actually not right. Like, I know that's not right. And they share that information with you in the community. That just is another building block in that wall of knowledge, which is the only way you can really do it in this space, is bit by bit.
yep. And then one last thing, we are going to be going live in March. So make sure to stay tuned for that. We'll go through all your brand new cards to your collection, maybe go over some of the other cards you've shown in the past. And if you guys have questions of the video, again, comments here or during that live stream. I'm super excited for it. Thanks again, guys, for checking out this video, and I will catch you in another one.